Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us here at the Doha Forum. I am the anchor for CNBC News in the region, and it's very exciting for us to be back here in Doha once again. Your Excellency, I want to kick off by asking you about the death of Jamal Khashoggi. It's been 2 months since this incident at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and your government has repeatedly said that you have audio recordings which link Saudi Arabia's crown prince directly to Mr. Khashoggi's death. When does your government plan on releasing those audio recordings?
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Very happy to be here in Doha, which is my second home. And also, I'm privileged to have this opportunity to address Doha Forum. With regards to your question, from the beginning, since he was murdered, which is a premeditated murder in Turkey, in Istanbul, we have been doing our best to conduct a very credible and transparent investigation. And we have been sharing the findings of the judiciary, prosecutor, as well as other institutions in Turkey. And you mentioned the voice records, and intelligence of the countries who were interested had the opportunity to listen that voice records. I also did that together with my President Erdogan. So you can see there, you can hear very clearly that they planned in advance to kill him. So it was not a severe fight, or he was not killed after resistance of him or after a fight. They brought even a forensic expert to cut the body in pieces, to chop him. And this guy, he is a professor at the university. To my mind, he is a sick man, and he enjoys chopping people. It is there, obviously, in the record. And since the beginning, from the beginning, we have been willing to cooperate with Saudi Arabia as well, since all these perpetrators came from Saudi Arabia, and now they are arrested there. And we accepted immediately the proposal coming from them for cooperation between our prosecutors, and we share all the information with them.
Are you saying that the Saudis have heard the audio recordings?
Sure.
Because
sure.
the foreign minister told me a few weeks ago that he has only seen a redacted transcript.
Maybe himself, foreign minister, didn't, but the experts they sent to Turkey heard that. If you remember, President Erdogan actually quoted from them. This guy who listened to voice records said, these guys who killed them probably were on drugs. Otherwise, a normal people cannot kill a person like this and cannot chop the body in pieces. So they also listen to voice records. But so far, we haven't been provided any information from the ongoing investigation in the Saudi Arabia. Their chief prosecutor got everything from us. In return, he didn't share anything with us. So our expectations to have a credible, transparent, and also swift investigation on Saudi side as well.
Foreign Minister, does your government know what happened to Mr. Khashoggi's remains?
We know that his body was cut in pieces, and his body was taken out of the consulate building, but we don't know where the body is. This is the main question. We need to find out, and this answer to this question. And at the end, they had to confess that there are local collaborators, but they haven't provided the name of the local collaborators either. And it was very strange to hear the statement of the chief prosecutor saying that they will send the police sketch of the collaborator. Well, I don't think this person, local collaborator or persons, were not picked up randomly from the street when they took out the body from the consulate building. It means that if there is a local collaborator, which they accepted, they actually met him or them or her in advance, so they know the name and contact them. Why don't you share it with Turkey?
Foreign Minister, given the fact that this has dragged on for the last 2 months, and there's still a lot of things that are very unclear about what exactly happened, given the fact that the audio hasn't been released publicly, many in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere have said that really President Erdogan is milking this and that it is politically motivated. How do you respond to that? Because there is no doubt that Turkey's record when it comes to freedom of the press and journalists is quite dire.
Well, Turkey is committed to freedoms. That's why Erdogan transformed this country. And the reform process in Turkey has been defined as silence revolution in Turkey. He is the same person. We are the same party, same government. We are committed to that. But in the last 5 years, the trauma that we have actually faced and the challenges that we have been facing, including the attempted coup. And some of the journalists also actively involved in the attempted coup.
But even the attempted coup, does that justify putting out of business over 100 organizations, as well as putting almost 100 journalists in prison?
Well, it is up to judiciary to decide, not you or not me, myself. If you look at the Turkish legislations, we have been revised them or adopted new legislations in the last 16 years. You cannot see one single step back legislation in Turkey. And we have taken the recommendations and the standards of the Council of Europe and the European Union to do so. So this is, at the end, is up to the judiciary. But we have the list of these people who are in prison, and you can look at the website of the Minister of Justice, and you can see the accusations. And I think nobody is immune from the, it doesn't matter what kind of job you have. If you are committed a crime, you are subject to the investigation, and you have to be brought to the justice. This is my understanding. And I have been also personally defending of the freedoms. I was president of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and I was there for 11 years. And now the reform in Turkey is priority. But what I am trying to say, this is not an issue, political issue between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. This is a criminal and judicial matter.
But sir, there are many that would say, given Turkey's record when it comes to journalists, that President Erdogan is perhaps one of the world's greatest hypocrites.
What is to do with President Erdogan here? So this person has been brutally killed. The others in Turkey, what happened is through the investigation or judicial process. And cutting people in pieces is something else, and premeditated murder is something else. Judicial matter are totally else. So are you trying to say that it is the fault of President Erdogan that this guy was killed? So what is the mistake of the President Erdogan? President Erdogan has been so determined from the beginning to go to the end of this case and to reach the outcome of the investigation. And many European countries who are promoting the freedom of media, freedom of the expression, are closing their eyes. And these countries and the politicians, you see the statement, putting some sanctions on the people who are already in prison, who will never be visiting those countries. So at the same time, we haven't accepted any proposal to close this case. So is it the big mistake of Erdogan to go to till end?
I can honestly say you don't find this hypocritical.
While everybody is, admitting that what Turkey has been doing is very transparent, very credible, and everybody appreciates Turkey. But we are not doing to get the appreciation from the others while they are closing their eyes. But this is the matter of life of a human being. Yes, he was a journalist. Okay, it's important. But first of all, he was a human being.
Are you disappointed with the reaction from the United States?
Well, you should tell me whether. They have also listened to voice records. And Gina Haspel was in Ankara to do so. So now it is up to them. I'm sure they have more information. Probably they know the list of the other names to be executed outside of the country. They have better intelligence probably. They know all the details. And maybe him, maybe he was not, it was not him. These are not the answers or statements that Erdogan makes. Erdogan is a very straightforward person, and he says openly what he believes. And also, his position on this issue has been very clear. But we have been also discussing this issue with the American friends and colleagues. Well, they have their own understanding of this murder. We have our own one.
Why do you think President Trump has refused, if there is a smoking gun that links the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to this death, why has President Trump refused to say so?
I don't know. You should better ask him. I'm
Another-
not his spokesperson. I'm
Another
not his
question.
foreign secretary.
Another question that's been revolving around these conversations has been the fate of Fethullah Gulen and what will happen to him next. Has there been progress made by your government in discussions to have him extradited back to Turkey?
Well, everybody was focusing on this Pastor Brunson, who is also a CIA agent. I'm also a very straightforward person like Erdogan. But it was a minor issue in our relations. We have more serious problems we had. One of them is the US supposed to YPG PKK in Syria, which are posing threat to our national security. And the second serious problem is the perpetrator of the attempted coup, the leader of this terrorist organization, are still in the United States. But recently, I have seen the credible investigation of the FBI in several states, and they have actually seen or noticed the darkness of this organization and how they have been violating the US laws, including tax fraud, visa fraud, and also some other illegal activities, and how professional they are. This is what FBI is telling us. So our expectation is also very clear. We have the bilateral agreements and international law is there, and this guy and the others belonging to this organization, 84 names that we have requested the United States to extradite, they should be extradited to Turkey.
Do you believe you're closer to having that happen?
Well, last time when we met in Buenos Aires, President Trump told Erdogan that they have been working on that. But we need to see concrete steps because it has been already more than 2 years, almost 3 years.
One of the main focuses of this conference has been the situation in Syria and what is going to happen next in that country. We've just seen the last town in Syria that was held by ISIL freed, liberated. But your government says they are planning to attack the very people who freed this town. President Trump has made it very clear that he doesn't want that to happen. At this point, are you willing to stand down?
Well, ISIS or Daesh was one of the main serious problems in both Syria and Iraq. And no other country has killed that many Daesh terrorists than Turkey. We have killed more than 4,000 Daesh terrorists, more than 3,000 of them in Syria, almost 1,000 of them in Iraq. But ISIS is not the only terrorist organization. There are other small groups and many foreign terrorist fighters in Idlib as well, and also PKK and YPG. But when it comes to YPG, PKK, our Western friends, are supporting them. Why? They have one pretext that YPG is fighting Daesh. Maybe in certain areas, yes, but the question is why they have been fighting Daesh. Just because they hate the ideology or to gain more territories in both countries? I think the answer is the second one. And today, everybody is closing their eyes to what YPG is doing and how they have been intimidating the other minorities. And I just met this Nobel Prize winner, the lady, Yazidi. And she has been telling me how forcibly PKK is recruiting Yazidi people in Sinjar. I think nobody here hears her voice. And recently I met Arameans, Assyrians, Syrianis in Turkish. And in the eastern part of the river, YPG PKK is closing their schools, intimidating them as well. And in Afrin, they force their children to fight against Turkish troops. So it means this is a terrorist organization. We have more than 300,000 Kurds, Syrian Kurds living in Turkey, and they cannot go back. Why? Because YPG, PKK forced them to leave, and they confiscated all their belongings, including their properties.
But Mr.
So
Foreign
this
Minister,
is a serious issue.
Moving Turkish troops in would no doubt mean putting more civilians at risk, putting NATO ally American
Why should
as well
I risk
at
the
risk.
NATO ally Americans? Is America shelter of the PKK terrorist organization? They shouldn't be. This is the problem. Why did they give that many weapons? More than 20,000 truck-loaded weapons. I didn't give these weapons. And these weapons are on the market, free market. Even Daesh are buying them.
So you're willing to put American lives
Look,
at risk and NATO ally?
we are not risking the American soldiers' lives. Our aim is, our target is the PKK and YPG terrorist organization, as it was in Afrin. And our target was Daesh terrorists, as it was during the Operation Euphrates Shields. Why Americans? Why should I? But if America believes that they are the shelter or they are the protector of this terrorist organization, that is something else. And we have the channels between the militaries to avoid any friendly fire or any accident. We have this channel, and we have good meal-to-meal cooperation as well. But the best way is actually, while we are focusing on the political solution, while we are trying to maintain the calm in Idlib, the best way is actually to work together to stabilize that part of Syria as well.
Is there not a political solution possible with the
for
YPG?
That. Yes, we have the roadmap, Münbiç roadmap. And if you look at the Münbiç roadmap, we will start with Münbiç, and YPG PKK will leave, and then Turkey and US will work together actually to stabilize this region, and we will hand over this Münbiç and the other areas to the local people. And what is the criteria here? Demography. Demography before Daesh and YPG arrived Münbiç. So according to this roadmap, after we implement this roadmap in Münbiç, we will start implementing it at the eastern part of the river. So this is the best way to stabilize the region and Syria. And it's also very important for the territorial integrity of the country, which we are very much committed as Turkey.
Is there a move that President Trump could make that would keep you, that would have you stand down?
Well, President Trump, I think, is now considering to leave Syria once again.
What happens next week in Geneva?
In Geneva next week, we are trying to make the announcement that we agree on the Constitution Committee, and we have some issues at the civil society list. Obviously, the regime is seeking two-thirds majority, which we are against as Turkey and the United Nations. And therefore, we have been working on it, but both sides know that we can reach an understanding through some compromises. And we are working on those compromises, compromise proposals, and our deputies are working intensively. So we are aiming to go to Geneva to announce that Constitution Committee is okay, and they will meet possibly by the end of this year or at the beginning of next year.
You said the UN is your main partner.
This is a very crucial process for a political settlement in Syria, which is the best solution.
You said that the UN is your main partner in this endeavor. Where are the Russians here? What support have you had?
Well, we have been working with Russia and Iran, like it or not, and here is the outcome. But so far, we haven't seen any concrete support from our coalition allies. They have their own small group meeting. From time to time, they try to draft a constitution for Syria. And in the past, in Astana, some countries also tried that. But we are against drafting a constitution on behalf of the people of Syria by the others. So let them draft their own constitution. If they need any expertise of some countries or institutions like Venice Commission, okay, we can do that. But they should draft their own constitution.
Are you comfortable with a future in Syria that includes President Assad?
Say it again, please.
Are you comfortable for a future in Syria that includes President Assad?
Well, what we are trying to do that we should have the constitution for the country. They should draft themselves. And we should prepare the country for the elections. And it should be conducted under the auspices of the United Nations, under the umbrella of United Nations. It has to be inclusive one. Everybody should be able to vote, the eligible ones, in Syria and outside of Syria, including the refugees in my country and neighboring countries and in other countries who were resettled in the last 7 years. And it has to be a very credible one, transparent, democratic, and fair elections. And then at the end, Syrian people should decide who is going to rule the country after these elections.
If those elections return Mr. Assad, will you work with him?
Well, if it is democratic elections and if it is a credible one, then everybody should consider that.
And finally, Foreign Minister, I want to ask you about another topic that's been discussed here at the forum, which is, of course, the crisis amongst the GCC countries. Is there a place for Turkey to play a role?
Well, we have been doing our best to overcome this unfortunate situation, which is a very artificial crisis, by the way. This is a sickness of the new era. I mean, countries like to create artificial crisis for their own interests. And from the beginning, Turkey has been doing its best as mediator. I visited Kuwait and also Qatar and Saudi Arabia as well. And some foreign ministers of these countries came to Turkey. And we also gave full support to Kuwait as mediator. But so far, we couldn't, unfortunately, overcome this situation. But at the first days, both Saudi Arabia and Bahrain particularly promised us to share the evidences and findings of their claims on Qatar. But so far, they haven't provided one single evidence of their accusations or claims, unfortunately. But I see that now Qatar has been strengthened. Qatar is becoming more and more self-sufficient. So I think this crisis and blockades haven't weakened Qatar, but contrary. And I'm very happy to see that.
Do you hold Saudi Arabia, and particularly the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, to blame for what we've seen happen in this crisis?
Well, I'm the foreign minister of Turkey. I don't want to give any name, but we have been very clear on this issue from the beginning that what happened, this crisis, and the blockades on the Qatari people is not fair and is not acceptable. This is our clear position. If Qatar did the same thing, we will say the same thing. I mean, we would also criticize Qatar. But what those 4 countries doing against Qatar is not what we can support, unfortunately. When you tell this, they don't like it, but I have to tell the truth.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.